Bet, Sharukkin, The Son of Perdition, by Alan Bonk. Chapter 20. Zedekiah's Grotto and Petra. Paul, Merodin, Father Ibrahim, and about 25 men were led to a cave and quarry by an engineer. The cave was just north of the temple complex, but still under the old city. It's called Zedekiah's Grotto. The cave had a large steel blast door at the entrance. The engineer ushered the men past the door and further into the heavily reinforced concrete cave. Paul positions himself in front of them. Gentlemen, you are all my most important allies and essential people to my government. As such, you have earned a place here in our new stronghold, in Zedekiah's Grotto, he said. The men cheered. He turned. They followed him on in. Paul and his men explored the space. It was stark, but had all the necessary amenities. An engineer came over to him. "Is everything to your liking, sir?" whispered the engineer. "Yes, you've done well. Now, I want to see my own accommodations," Paul said. "Yes, of course," the engineer led him on. Paul, in his own chamber, closed the door behind him. The fluorescent light over him flickered and then went pitch dark. His spiritual counselors gathered around him. The first counselor began, "It has become clear with time that the Jews in Petra are not coming out on their own. I want them gone before the 7-year security agreement lapses. You have only weeks before that time. I have used all my neutron weapons against the kings of the East. A tactical nuke might be dropped right into the center of Petra, but there's no guarantee that all the people would die from the initial blast. But they certainly would not survive the fallout," Paul replied. The spirits chuckled. "Why are you laughing?" Paul asked. "We know how to do it. We've done it before. We had previously destroyed the Nabateans, who lived in Petra. That destruction took place around the 4th century AD. It looked like a natural disaster, but we did it," the spirits said proudly. "We used an earthquake and flood, spiritually triggered and naturally accomplished. We used the earthquake to loosen the rocks and sand within Petra, and then caused a massive rainstorm over the city. Petra is essentially a rock basin with a drain at one end. The drain is the narrow cut in the rocks leading out of the city. Our storm was greater than the Nabateans had ever seen before. The drain channel going out of the city clogged up with sand. The city was under 50 feet of water. Those who actually survived left the city and never returned." Paul asks, "Can you do it again?" "Yes, of course. The site has not changed at all since that time. If you send troops to Petra and seal the entrance, we can cause the rain and the quake. The results should be the same," cheered the spirits. "Very well. I give you my order," responded Paul. The spirits dispersed. They can hardly contain their excitement. Now, in Petra, the spiritual powers, the spirits, hovered around the stronghold. They started to perform a dance-like ritual, but it was quickly broken as God's angels pressed them further back from the stronghold. They cursed as they fell back. The spiritual powers hovered further back from around Petra, and the skies turned darker, more sinister. A small segment of earth and sand parted. It went unnoticed except for a young boy who ran towards his mother in the shelter, somewhere above the floor in Petra. The people had been told by the angels to stay well above the valley floor. God's angels in Petra knew what was being attempted. The Assyrian troops arrived at the entrance channel of Petra the Sikh. They parted formation so that 2 cranes could pass through. They quickly put in place a series of stackable concrete blocks in front of the Sikh. A group of people were huddled together on the other side. Most of them are in fervent prayer. A woman calmed her young children. It's going to be all right, she hushes them. The news crew scoured the plaza to find the angels. They found them at the top of the watchtower and stood behind them, overseeing the progress of Paul's troops through a CCTV monitor closed circuit. The angels saw the crew and explained, "We don't need to do anything about it. We are sealed within Petra." Outside the Sikh, the blockade was now 50 feet high. The entire structure was then covered with spray-on, quick-drying concrete. The people inside were busy preparing for the flood. They took all the essential equipment, food and water and fuel, to higher points in the sides of Petra. There was an obvious tension, but the people were very disciplined and organized under the direction of the angels. The ritual, by the powers of Ashur, became more intense. Their chants louder, their dance more frantic. Then they stopped. Silence. A glass of water shook slightly. The people within Petra braced themselves, and the spirits looked down, bewildered. They started their ritual once again. They knew how angry Paul would be if they failed. Very little shaking took place below. The spirits stopped. How can this be? Petra and the whole area is unstable. It's a part of the Great Rift, they asked each other. They turned to the rain. A spirit jolted out of formation. It screeched. Then all of them reached out into the heaven. Booming thunder, large lightning above them. Then they brought down their arms in fury towards Petra. Powerful rain slammed into the city. Very quick torrents began to fill the lower parts of Petra. But just before the water started to threaten the people, inside the bottom of the basin, the solid rock split wide open, and the earth itself swallowed the flood. No amount of rain could cause it to flood. The storm subsided, and within moments, it stopped. The day was unnaturally dark. Very uncomfortable feeling over everyone. The news crew breathed a sigh of relief. This was the first time they had actually seen spiritual activity and warfare. And it's now clear they're on the right side of the battle. Now, they wonder, what's next? End of chapter 20.